So this past week, ACT dropped a bomb, some major changes to the ACT test format and timing. And in its news blog press release, if you don't know, there's two basic things that are changing. One, the science section is becoming optional. And two, they are changing the timing of the tests and the items. They're potentially shortening the test on what they call the new core test and shortening reading and English passages and providing more time per question. But the release was kind of vague, like which questions are going away? How much more time per question are you getting? And how do they do that without being adaptive and still manage to assess your score? We have some insider information. I reached out to ACT and got some official responses to some of my questions that I had in terms of when are the changes happening, paper versus digital, because it wasn't totally clear. Two, what exactly are the changes? What's shortening? How much is it shortening by? What's this deal with more time per question? All of those details. And how can students prepare for the new exam, and when will we have materials to that end? And finally, when can students sign up for this test that doesn't have a science section? And we're going to share that in this video today. My name is Brooke. I've been coaching the ACT for over 2 decades, and I've created an online course for the ACT. So if you're prepping for the ACT, I definitely recommend that you check it out. The best ACT prep course ever. You can find it at SupertutorTV.com. We also have private tutors who work with us to teach one-on-one for the ACT. You can also find information about that on our website. We're also on several other social platforms. We have over 500,000 views on our short announcing this particular change on TikTok and Instagram. Join the cool kids. First up, when is this all actually rolling out? So in the press release, it said that it's rolling out for the online ACT in April of 2025, which is really close and coming up, and in 2026 for school day testing. But it wasn't clear, what about the paper test at national test dates? What about international testing centers? First, national online testing, which by the way, they use this term online testing, but all it means is digital testing, and you can't do it at home. You do it at a test center on a device that's provided by that testing center, not your own device. Okay, so they call that online testing, but it's not actually like you doing it online at home at all. You're doing it at a testing center that's offering the digital ACT, and it's not offered in all areas, and it's not offered at all sites. So those seats might be limited, but that testing, it will be available, like they said in the press release, in April 2025, but only in the United States. Only national test dates in the US, okay? In September, the following September, they will then roll that out digitally to international test sites. So if you're in Ireland, if you're in South Africa, if you're somewhere else in the world, your international test date where you can see these changes on your exam will start September of 2025. Also in September 2025, we're going to see the paper test on the weekend, so Saturday or Sunday. You will see this new retimed version of the ACT with an optional science section. Then for state and district testing, you've got to wait a little longer. So if you're taking state and district tests, you're still going to be getting the current version of the SAT through the entirety of 2025. And then in spring of 2026, starting with the February testing window, state and district testing will then pick up the ACT with enhancements, as they say. State and districts are also going to get new flexibility to test across different days once these changes are implemented. So what exactly is changing? How is it getting retimed from section to section? And is it really a shorter test? Well, newsflash, this is actually the most shocking thing that I figured out after I got the email from ACT. The new ACT test isn't actually any shorter than the current version unless you get rid of the science section. If you take it with the science section, it's the same length. It's 2 hours and 55 minutes. But here's the breakdown section by section. It is changing where that time is allocated in some ways that I think is going to be really helpful for students who feel like they've run out of time on the ACT. So if that's you, if you feel like, oh my gosh, I ran out of time, what it's going to do is it's going to level the playing field between kids who get extra time and kids who don't get extra time. And it's going to become probably a little bit harder on a question level so that they can continue to challenge students. So there's probably going to be more challenging items, but you're not going to struggle with time as the challenge, which is how the ACT used to be. It was really a race, but it looks like the character is going to change a little bit. So let's dig into this. In the English section, we're looking to have 50 items, which is 25 fewer items than before, with 35 minutes to test compared to 45 minutes previously. What does that actually amount to per question? 42 seconds per question versus a previous 36 seconds per question. Now, I will say as a tutor, most of my students, and I tend to work with high achieving students, but most of my students did not struggle very much with time on the English section. So it's nice to have this extra time, and it's going to help some people on the exam. But overall, it's probably not a make it or break it change for a lot of students because most students didn't feel so rushed on the English section, but certainly it's going to do away with those of you who might have some time qualms if you didn't already have additional time. It's also going to reduce the amount of advantage that people with additional time have. The next section is the math section. It's expected to have 45 items, 15 fewer than before, and students will have 50 minutes to complete the test, which is 10 fewer minutes than they used to have. They'll be allotted 66.7 seconds per question, the same amount as in the reading, and they previously had 60 seconds per question. But as I always like to say as a tutor, I wasn't spending 60 seconds on every question. I was spending 30 seconds on easier questions, 45 seconds on middle level questions, and maybe a minute 15 or something or longer on hard questions. So whether this is helpful or not in the math, I'm going to say really is going to come down to where are they trimming the items? Are they trimming items on the easy end of the scale on the math exam? If so, I'm not sure that more time will make this easier because on an ACT, the amount of time it takes per question to complete each question varies really drastically. So we're not going to know how the math section plays out in terms of easier or harder until we have some sample exams to look at. The reading section is expected to have 36 items, 4 fewer than before, with 40 minutes to test. That's 5 additional minutes for 4 less questions. What that comes out to is 66.7 seconds per question approximately versus 52.5 seconds previously. This is big. They're also promising to potentially shorten the reading passages. The reading is one of the sections where students have the most trouble finishing on time on the ACT. So making this a test that breathes a little bit more, that has shorter passages so we have less to read, and we have a little bit more time per question in addition is probably a really welcome change for a lot of students. Finally, science, and this is kind of huge. Science is the same test, it's 40 items, just like it used to be. The only thing that's changing on the science is they're adding 15 minutes to the end of it. So this is really the big, generous gift to you guys is that you're going to have 15 extra minutes to do the science. So those of you that really struggle to find the exact detail in the chart to answer the question, it takes you too long to find it. That's not going to be as much of a hindrance. That being said, I expect there to be a few more difficult science questions to make up for the fact that kids aren't running out of time. Right now we have students running out of time all over the place in the science section and the reading section especially. So as we get rid of that problem, we're going to have to probably make those sections a little bit harder to keep up. Now, ACT hasn't said that they're doing that, but that's my instinct as a tutor if they want to keep the scores balanced. So the only real way to make this test shorter, given the math, which you guys did with me, right? 2 minutes and 2 hours, 5 minutes plus 50 minutes for the science. That's 2 hours and 55 minutes. So let's talk about the science timing. You're going to have 40 items with 50 minutes to test. That's 75 seconds per question versus a previous 52.5 seconds per question. Huge difference. Now, I know the big question many of you are asking is, but will colleges take the ACT without the science section? We don't know yet, and nor do a lot of the colleges. They haven't even figured out their policies yet. This is a bomb that ACT just dropped on all of us. So colleges and universities haven't necessarily determined how they're going to manage it. So we will probably do another video as soon as the dust settles and colleges and universities start to release their policies to that end. But here's my tutor prediction. Schools are more likely to ask you to take the science section if they already are requiring test scores overall. If a school is test optional, obviously you can submit absolutely nothing. So what's wrong with then submitting 3 out of 4 of the sections? We don't know. The other question is, can you super score across tests that have a science section or don't have a science section? That's going to be a decision made by individual institutions, not necessarily by ACT. So again, we're going to have to wait on how those institutions respond, but stay tuned to our channel. Make sure you subscribe so you can keep in the know. So the next question that I asked ACT is, when are we going to get some practice materials so that we know what this new version of the test looks like? New test prep materials, including a full-length practice test, they said will be available in early 2025. But they said a full-length practice test. That's one. However, they said current practice tests and available ACT test prep materials are still great for prepping because there has been no significant change in the types of knowledge and the skills measured by the enhanced ACT test. We will have more information to share in the coming months. So what I would say is if you want to prep for the ACT, I'm not saying you have to jump the boat because there's only going to be one practice test in this new format by January. What I would say is use all the materials that are available now, but understand that when you get the actual test, whatever the harder questions on the ACT are, you might have a few more of those so that they can actually tell how you're scoring when you have more time per question. So that's just something to watch out for. I think they're going to have to crank the test a bit and make it a little bit harder. You know, they're not going to admit to that, but I think that that might be the case. So just be aware that you've really got to crank it up. The other thing you could do, and I wouldn't recommend this on the math section because again, the math really depends on which type of question you're looking at. But in the reading section, you might give yourself a little bit more time on practice sections and work on how do I use that extra time? Same with the English section. You might give yourself 42 seconds per question when you're practicing versus 36. You might give yourself 66.7 seconds per question in the reading section versus 52.5, or maybe something happy medium in between. The other thing I would say is you could also practice pacing yourself at the current test's timing, but then give yourself an extra 5 minutes at the end to go over what you missed. And that might also simulate the kind of bump or advantage you'll get on the newer exam if you want to be prepping for it. Finally, when can you sign up for it? Well, not yet. They're still figuring this out logistically. So you can't sign up for April onward, but they have a cool thing called ACT registration alerts you can sign up for. So we're going to put the link in the blog that goes with this video. You can find the link to our blog in the description. And then you guys can sign up for registration alerts and ACT will tell you when registration opens. That's especially important for those of you in impacted areas like Washington State, like California, anywhere on the West Coast where ACT sites tend to book up really quickly. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel so you can keep in the know of all of the awesome things about test prep and college admissions. I also will be doing videos to give you tips on how to have an edge on this test, how to study the current materials for the new test, that kind of good stuff. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you soon.